Hey everyone, Tutun here with another hyper spicy video for your entertainment. Do you reminisce about the horrors of Goki Gumblar hand loops? Do you long for the heydays of Trickstar being the third best deck in 2017 Spyral format? Well, I present to you, my adoring audience, Droll hand loop Spyral. Of course, I was actually not going to play Trickstar, that'd be ridiculous, though early iterations of this list did use Trickstar reincarnation, which I'll bring up right now, just for everyone's entertainment. But Spyral can consistently access this combo through their own combo, so like with many things, Spyral just uses another Archetype's cards to do something degenerate. We're using Spirals and Dangers and whatnot to access the all-time classic complete hand loop of Droll, plus either Disturbance Strategy or Droll or Trickstar Reincarnation. As you can see, I am using Disturbance Strategy, which performs the same function as Trickstar Reincarnation. There's arguments for and against both. Disturbance Strategy shuffles, which is better than banishing in most cases, because some cards trigger when banished. That said, shuffling means you don't get the rare, unusual situation of Trickstar Reincarnation itself being an out to maxi. If you special summon enough cards, you can just flip Reincarnation and deck your opponent out once they get to 20 or more cards in hand, typically, even without draw access, which is fairly funny. Since Disturbance Strategy shuffles the cards into the deck, it can't quite do that. Of important note to most of you, Trickstar Reincarnation is an ultra rare and Disturbance Strategy is a normal rare, so it's cheaper to go Disturbance. I just like seeing the cards shuffled in, honestly, that's why I'm running it. The general idea is you want to access three particular things in this combo. The first is Union Carrier to equip a Sanguine to a Dark monster. You then link off the monster, and Sanguine adds the Droll to your hand, which could then be used on your opponent's turn next turn. The second part of the strategy is, of course, access to Curious, usually through 3 darks, sending a Trickstar Reincarnation or Disturbance Strategy to the graveyard, and then setting it with Nightmare Griffin. Finally, yes, I am on Trigate Wizard, much to my, chagrin, but this combo can potentially lose to cards like Call by the Grave in response to Droll, so you do need an Omni Negate. The deck's already on Sanguine and the Trap as bricks, and I don't want to add more, so Trigate's your most efficient card in this way. Also, you're already doing a whole lot of link climbing, so you typically have enough leftover material to make it, so it's not that big of an investment. The really inspired part of this combo is that partway through, we use the rank 1 Xyz access to go into Shimoji Soldier. I bet you've never seen this little guy before. This little guy makes both you and your opponent draw a card in your opponent's next standby phase. This will turn on Droll before your opponent gets to a main phase to interact with you, and you can immediately activate your trap, chain Droll, and instead of waiting for your opponent to trigger Droll, you could just use it then and there and hand loot them entirely. The firewall is also in here in case you have you have to go to Curious early and you mill Sanguine or Droll. Firewall can add them to hand at that point, either Sanguine or Droll. If it's Sanguine, Union Carrier can equip it. If it's Droll, you don't have to worry about Union Carrier. Also, it can counter Call by the Grave too by bouncing Droll to hand in response if you haven't used your Fireball Dragon. Sometimes it's worth making Aper Appaloosa just for that reason alone if you don't have a reason to make Appaloosa in a particular matchup. Apo does stop Ash Blossom from negating the trap though, so it's 6-1, half dozen the other. Make the decision during the game and based on your opponent's deck, which you will see with Drone. This list and combo is largely brewed and inspired by Kevin OG, though I've obviously messed around with it for my own purposes and added some cards and taken out other ones. He got the idea from resident Trickstar enthusiast Alpaca, who postulated that Spyral can probably put together the Droll hand loop consistently. Kevin came up with the basic combo and the extra deck setup to make it work, though it was largely a group effort of the chat with stuff like Shimoji Soldier and Sanguine being suggestions that Kevin eventually included to make the combo less resource intensive. Kevin does have the fairly linear Souls Fix combo typed out, and I'll put a cleaned up version of that combo in the description. That said, it does go into Curious before Union Carrier, which isn't always necessary if your combo is uninterrupted, since it does run the risk of milling Droll and Sanguine, and then wasting your Firewall Dragon activation and link material. Anyhow, that's the breakdown. Let's show some hand loops. Alrighty, so here's the first of 3 games I'm going to show you guys, and this is pretty much full combo. It's Small World to go get to Souls, and even if I get Ash Blossomed here, it's 2 Dangers, and if either of the Dangers discards Master Plan or Rescue Mission, I could go into Board Blocker, discard the other one, and then Rescue Mission back Master Plan, and combo from there. So it's pretty much combo regardless, even if the Small World doesn't resolve, so it's a pretty solid hand. But, I'm just going to lead off on Small World, and if my opponent's got nothing, then I can go ahead and do it. As you can see, this is I am running Pankratops with the Gamma in this particular version, so you always kind of want to banish Pankratops because you don't want to draw it off your Magician Souls once you get there, so that's why I used to banish with Tsuchinoko. There was an argument to banishing Master Plan instead of Pankratops, but sometimes weird situations come up depending on your opponent's hand traps, like DD Crow or something, where you do want the second Master Plan, so I didn't really want to banish it, even though a Danger is generically going to be better in this hand as extra material. Or as a better discard piece. So go ahead and use Magician Souls and Master Plan. Activate this Nessie while I have 2 cards in my hand that I don't mind discarding. And I discard the Master Plan, which is fine. I would have preferred to discard the Rescue Mission because it would let me go further in the combo and draw more cards off Souls, but no big deal. I draw Magician Souls off my Danger draw, which isn't great, and I draw a Drone, which is even worse. one of the drawbacks of this kind of combo is it's very resource intensive. It's both link intensive and cards in hand intensive because you go through double Quik Fix twice, especially in this game where I do it. So drawing your searchable cards that you're going to go get through automatically throughout the combo is a bit annoying, but you kind of deal with it, and you figure out how many cards you have to discard before you commit to any certain adds. And I'll get to that in a second and why I'm actually going to eventually skip Sleeper. So I'll go ahead and add Rescue Mission with my Master Plan that I revive off Rescue Mission. Go ahead and go into Borg Blocker. My opponent hasn't ashed me yet, and I don't think they're going to have an ash at this point. They didn't have a prompt on my souls, so I didn't worry about it. But I did use Borg Blocker because I just wanted to get this Rescue Mission in the graveyard regardless. I'll go ahead and activate Spyral Resort to protect my Quik Fix. Add my Big Red back to Master Plan. You know this whole song and dance, right? We're going to get Assault, go into Helix, discard Assault with Quik Fix, Assault in Drone. This is the typical Spyral linear line at this point. One thing I did make an immediate mistake on is I should not have summoned my Magician Souls in this zone, because this is the zone I want to summon Union Carrier in. So I want to put like my Quik Fix and my Drone in this zone, because it's better to make the Union Carrier with the cards you have the most access to, whereas Dark Monsters are going to be more valuable later for going into Curious. So I would have preferred to put my Magician Souls in this zone and then summon Quik Fix or Drone over here. Also, I did leave Magician Souls on the field and use Nessie instead of Magician Souls because I want to use Magician Souls to go into Celine. In the combo that I'm going to post in the description, the basic Souls plus Quik Fix combo, you actually want to do this anyhow, but you want to do Helix plus Magician Souls to go into Celine. So it's a little different because I had to open up with Borg Blocker instead of Helix, but not that different. Go ahead and Assault in Drone stack their deck. At this point, I know my opponent's on Sky Striker. I put a Maxi on top because I'm not summoning it on their turn in this particular version of the combo. And Quik Fix is going to add a Big Red. I summoned the Quik Fix because we do need to go into 2 rank 1 XZs in this particular combo because I messed up a little bit. So as you can see, because I messed up, I'm going to have to Celine in my Master Plan to this zone, which means I'm going to have to make my Union Carrier with my Master Plan. That's not ideal. I would prefer to make Union Carrier with like my random machine monsters that I got plenty of extra access to, and then summon Master Plan to one of these zones. So this is a bit of a mistake on my part in execution. The reason why this is important is because we are making Tri-Gate Wizard. So we do need to, if you want to maximize your link material, you want to summon Union Carrier, who has a right pointing arrow for Tri-Gate Wizard in this zone, because it can link off, it can co-link with Tri-Gate here without wasting material, and you can put your Nightmare Griffin right here, and you can put your Sleeper right here, and that kind of like sets up the entire zone. So you want to make Union Carrier here, so whatever creatures you want to use to make Union Carrier, put one of them in this zone so you don't mess up and make your Curious harder to make than it should be. But I'm still going to get there, and you'll see how. So I'm going to go ahead and link Kribo, and I do that because I need to get into Union Carrier. And I realize my mistake right now is like, hold on, how am I getting to Union Carrier with Master Plan in that zone? I'd have to go to Curious first, which isn't necessarily bad. I have wasted my Borg Blocker, which makes it a little more difficult, but I could go into Duel Hand before I go into Shimoji Soldier. It's not a big deal. But it makes it more difficult because I don't want to potentially risk milling Sangian or Droll if I don't have to. So I am going to go about it a roundabout way and waste a little material in the process. This is going to cost me a sleeper on my end board. So, yeah, you know, mistakes do happen, and this is a hard combo to do. Go ahead and discard the Rescue Mission for Quik Fix and go right into my Shimoji Soldier. And Shimoji Soldier triggers, so now we're both going to draw a card in the standby phase, which will let me trigger my draw. We'll go ahead and use Link Kribo to summon here. This is why I didn't open up with Link Kribo. In the past, with the Curious combos, you'll notice that I would use Magician Souls to go into Link Kribo and then set up Link Kribo with Borg Blocker at that point. But I saved Link Kribo specifically for here because I needed to use it twice. Once for Union Carrier and once for Curious. Also, I do need a Dark Monster on the field to equip Sangian to. I go ahead and just use Link Kribo right now. And I'm going to clear up zones because I need 3 Dark Monsters and Quik Fix and a Dark Monster. So I need 3 zones to put Dark Monsters in. So just go ahead and link up into Appaloosa to clear up those zones. At this point, I'm going to add Super Agent. It does not matter at this point because I've figured out I'm going to use whatever this creature is to make Nightmare Griffin or Nightmare Griffin or Tri-Gate Wizard. And Sleeper is not the best for that. I'd rather just have Sleeper still in my deck to search for the resort later. So go ahead and use Quik Fix, discard the Spare Big Red. Quik Fix, discard the Spare Magician Souls. And go into Duel Hand. This is kind of why drawing Drone was obnoxious, because one of those Quik Fixes would have drawn a Drone, would have added a Drone to my hand, and I would have been able to, you know, discard. I would have had a different card in hand at this point to discard. So I just go ahead and go into Duel hand, Rescue Mission Bag Master Plan. This gets me 3 differently typed dark monsters to go to Curious. I'm going to summon Curious here, doesn't really matter at this point. Sangin will trigger and Curious will trigger. Now it's not a big deal which order they trigger in. Sangin's mandatory, so it has to trigger first, but Curious's random mill effect will resolve on a new chain, so you don't have to worry about it messing up your Sangin at this point. So I go ahead and send Disturbance Strategy. Sangin will add Droll to my hand, and at this point, Curious will then mill 3 randomly. Amusingly, I did hit a Spyral Resort, which means I can add that back to my hand in end phase because I did trigger Borg Blocker this turn. Just going to go ahead and use my Rescue Mission, add back my Master Plan. This will get me my material I need for my Nightmare Griffin. And at this point, this is kind of where I figured I was going. I needed another discards, so I'm going to have to discard my last resort to go into Griffin, blah, blah, blah. If I had managed my zones a little better, I could have potentially just left Selene on board and not gone to Appaloosa. But again, like I said, this is early on when I was testing the deck, and I wasn't quite confident in the combo, and I did mess it up a little bit, so I was short a couple of material here that I shouldn't have had to be. So I go ahead and discard this last resort that I don't need, set this Disturbance Strategy, and I draw this Call by the Grave, which I don't want to discard, and I actually do make another small misplay here out of habit. There was literally no reason for me to discard the Super Agent to summon the Quik Fix, because all this is going to do is banish the Quik Fix when I make Trigate. I'm used to Link monsters in this deck needing monsters with different names, you know, like for instance, Appaloosa needs 2 monsters with different names. Nightmare Griffin needs 2 monsters with different names. Every Nightmare needs monsters with different names. Trigate Wizard just needs 2 monsters except tokens. And I could have just used Super Agent and Double Helix, which I wasn't used to being able to do for link climbing. So all I did was banish an extra Quik Fix for no reason. Not that big a deal. I still have a Quik Fix in graveyard, and I'm unlikely to need 2. But it's still a small, imprecise bit of play that you shouldn't repeat. So I go ahead and set this Call by the Grave that I drew, because why not? And here's the combo. I've got Disturbance Strategy, I've got Call By, I've got Trigate, I've got Nightmare Griffin, I've got Droll. So we both draw a card, and as soon as we both draw a card, I can now trigger Droll. But you have to use Disturbance Strategy or Trickstar Reincarnation, whichever you want to use first. Because if you use Droll first, you then can't even activate a card that makes your opponent draw cards, like Strategy or like Reincarnation. So I use Disturbance Strategy, I chain Droll and Lockbird, and this is why we play Trigate Wizard. Your opponent is very likely to have a Call by the Grave in their first 5 cards, and so you chain Trigate Wizard and negate, and your opponent concedes. And there you go, that's the hand loop. But you didn't actually get to see me loop their hand, that's no fun. Let's get on to game 2 where I actually get to show it off. Alright, so here we are with the second game, and this time I'm actually going to show you me looping their hand. That's the fun part. And this actually is not a full combo, though I do have 2 cards which can draw me deeper into my deck to potentially get me to full combo. So let's go ahead and get started. I will lead off on Souls because I don't want to activate Nessie before I, get the most important play in my deck out of the way. That is putting Master Plan in Graveyard. And then I'll activate Souls to send Assault Mission. Now my opponent does use Imperm here, which I was trying to draw into plays here, so technically my opponent was in the right to do this, but generally speaking it is very stupid to negate the draw effect off Souls, especially when you see me sending a mission. This mission could just get me into any number of things with spirals in my hand. In this particular hand, no. If I had a drone and a Super Agent or a drone and a Last Resort even, I could assault him one, normal summon the other, and full combo from there. But negating the draw is not generally good, though it will hurt me here a little bit. So they do negate my Magician Souls. And at this point, I'm just going to activate Nessie. I really want to draw a card, so I'm not going to risk summoning Super Agent by blind calling. I might want to actually get into the Super Agent later off in my combo if this Nessie ends up being good. So I discard Super Agent. That sucks, but no big deal. Sleeper would have been the discard here because you don't really need Sleeper that much in this end combo. The only time you really need Sleeper is if your opponent, droplets your entire board and you don't have the out for it with a Rescue Mission in rotation to chain the Droll to. But Sleeper's not super important. You can discard in situations like this or send it off a 1-for-1. Super Agent's obviously an extender, which I would have liked to have. But I did draw into a Spyral Resort with Nessie. This is why Dangers are so good. They just draw you cards and give you extra material. And because of the extra material, I'm not going to have to do the typical Souls plus Fix combo that you would have seen that you will see in the description that I'm going to post for you guys. But I can go a little bit more safe and go into my Union Carrier first, and I'll show you how to do that with this particular hand. And a very fun thing is, because I drew into a resort and I have a big red in rotation and I discarded an assault mission with my Magician Souls, I can go straight into Selene very early on in the combo. I don't have to, use my double Helix and waste my double Helix, because I want a Super Agent name on the field, which is important because I don't have the Super Agent in hand in this particular combo to use later more efficiently. I'd have to, do it at a weird time. So I can just go straight into Selene and preserve my double Helix for later and preserve my Barricade Borg Blocker for later. So this is one of the things, like Spyral is not necessarily linear. I could have gone through the linear strategy, but I didn't need to because I just had a situation where I already had the spells in rotation. So I'll just go ahead and play the other resort, summon the master plan. Amusingly, I did add the last resort off my master plan trigger because I'm running low on Spyral names. I'm eventually going to use this resort to add a master plan to hand because I just got nothing else to go for. Because I want to summon my Quik Fix from deck with Helix. I'll go ahead and discard Rescue Mission, add Drone. I already discarded the Assault Mission, so I don't need to discard Assault Mission off Quik Fix. So now I can just go straight into Assault Mission for Drone. If you did not have Assault Mission in rotation, you would have searched it and sent it here. Stack my opponent's deck, put a Maxi on top, of course, very useless for my opponent. And at this point, I know my opponent is on Pendulums, which will make a little bit of difference in my end board, and I'll say why when we get there. So I'll go ahead and summon Quik Fix, add the extra Big Red to hand, just to have extra cards in hand, add the Master Plan in hand, for the exact same reason. I can go straight into Link Reba. And this is fairly important. I'm going to go discard Rescue Mission. I want to go to Link Reba early here because it lets me get into Curious later, and it gives me a monster to equip Sang into. So I'm going to discard this Rescue Mission, summon the Quik Fix. That can go to my Shimoji Soldier early. Shimoji Soldier is normally later in the combo because I'm ahead on material and I don't need the Duel hand, and I'll show you why in a second. I can just go straight into Shimoji Soldier immediately and get that out of the way. Now I'll just go ahead and summon Quik Fix, and I can use Drone plus Quik Fix as two machine monsters to make Union Carrier. Union Carrier can go ahead and equip Sangan. I'll just link off these two into a Borg blocker. This is a waste of link material, and that is where functionally the extra link material that Nessie represented is going towards. This waste of link material right here. But I did need another Dark Monster to get into my Curious, and that would be Master Plan here. Or Borg blocker plus Master Plan plus Link Reba. Because I did not go into Duel hand. I'm holding Duel hand for later if I would have needed it, but I don't actually. So I will trigger Curious and Sangan just like the previous game. It does not matter if you trigger them on the same chain because the random mill will happen afterwards. So we'll send Disturbance Strategy, add Draw and Lockbird. The random mill will happen, nothing of relevance hit the graveyard. And now I can use my Drone to add my Super Agent in hand. We can go ahead and add Super Agent, summon Super Agent, and this will turn back on my Quik Fixes. So no big deal that I discarded at the beginning. I still got where I needed to. I just had to use up my Drone. So we'll discard Rescue Mission with Quik Fix, Rescue Mission back a double Helix. Link those off into a Tri-Gate Wizard. Woo, no problem. And I do the Tri-Gate Wizard first, just because it gets me a draw off Nightmare Griffin. Might as well get a draw, right? No harm in that. And Nightmare Griffin will discard the Big Red, extra Big Red that I added earlier. Set Disturbance Strategy. Now we'll Big Red, Rescue Mission back my double Helix. Now, there is a question about whether I should do this or not. I could leave the Rescue Mission in my graveyard, so in case my opponent chains a Droplets to my Disturbance Strategy, if my opponent does that and sends a monster, I can't put Draw on the same chain, and then I won't hand loop my opponent. They'll just put their hand into they'll shuffle their hand into the deck, and then draw the same number of cards, and then I can activate Draw, which isn't really a hand loop, right? It just puts them under Draw, which isn't that big a deal, and they drew an extra card for their trouble, so that's bad. So if I was worried my opponent would be on Forbidden Droplets, I would want to save this Rescue Mission instead of using it to go into, as you'll see in just a second, a Firewall Dragon. But at this point, I know my opponent is on Pendulum, and Pendulum is incredibly unlikely to play Forbidden Droplets. Most Pendulum monsters don't do anything in the graveyard. They don't really have a bunch of spells or traps that do a whole lot in the graveyard. You know, Pendulum decks typically operate out of the face-up extra deck, which is how they work. So it's almost never the case you'll see them playing Forbidden Droplets. Whereas it is potentially likely that my opponent would have two Called by the Graves in hand, and this board beats two Called by the Graves. So if I activate Disturbance Strategy, chain Draw and Lockbird, if my opponent uses one Called by the Grave, I'll negate it with Tri-Gate Wizard. If my opponent activates a second Called by the Grave, I'll chain Fireball Dragon to bounce Draw and Lockbird to my hand to protect it from Called by the Grave. And that's the general idea, and this is the kind of decision making you kind of want to make for this. You know, play around the most number of things you can play around, right? It's a almost 0% chance my opponent's on Droplets. There's a more than 0% chance they're on two Called by, and that they could draw both of them. So I go ahead and put Super Magician back in my deck, summon Sleeper and all, and this is the full board. So we both draw a card, I chain Disturbance Strategy, chain Draw, my opponent will shuffle their hand to the deck, and concede! There you go, that is the hand loop, and that's the fun part, seeing all the cards go back into the deck. I'm going to have one more game for you, which is a bit of a doozy, and it's not even one I played. Alright, so here are the third and final game of this little video, and as you can see from the bottom left hand corner, this is not my replay, but one by Kevin OG, the person responsible for this war crime. And as you can see, his deck does vary from mine. He does run a Bigfoot, and this might be a wise meta call at this point. Flandreese is so popular that having a searchable main deck card that can potentially out a Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds, while still being of danger going first in most instances, is pretty good. That said, going first, it is the worst danger in your deck because it does not guarantee do anything if it snipes. So Kevin does the typical thing, set the card he does not want to discard, and he activates Bigfoot first. The reason you want to activate Bigfoot first is because if it snipes, that's the worst case scenario. So you want to do it while you have the most cards in hand. So right now it's a 75% chance. If you opened up with Jackalope, discarded a random card, or discarded even Bigfoot, he would have one less danger in hand, or one less card in hand to activate with Bigfoot. So activate Bigfoot first and discard Rescue Mission. That's the best case scenario. And let's see what he draws. He draws into a Tsuchinoko. So, at this point, while he doesn't get guaranteed the Droll hand loop version of the combo, 2 dangers with 1 on field already is a combo of some kind, because even if both these cards snipe, they'll still put 2 dangers on the field. He can go into Curious with that, and Curious can send Master Plan, Big Red Master Plan, or Rescue Mission, either one. Link off Master Plan, you're good to go. That said, if he uses Curious to extend, he can't use Curious to send Trickstar Reincarnation, so you do lose out on that part of the combo, but you could still add Droll and stuff. Nothing stopping you from doing that. So he activates Tsuchinoko, Tsuchinoko snipes, activates Jackalope, discards Call by the Grave, and adds a Master Plan. This is solid. So this means he can actually save his Curious to go to Trickstar Reincarnation, because he can just link off 2 dangers for board blocker, discarding Master Plan, Rescue Mission back Master Plan, and there you go. Now an odd thing here is, what do you link off Master Plan for? Typically the 2 cards you most often link off Master Plan for are, of course, double Helix, but the other one is Barricade Board Blocker when you don't have a Quik Fix in play. And he's already uses Barricade Board Blocker as a way to get access to his Master Plan, so what's the best solution here? Well, if you guessed Curious, you would be right. These are 3 differently typed dark monsters. You can link all these off for Curious, and while this does risk milling his Droll or milling his Sangan, he still is running, I want to make sure, yeah, he still is running Fireball Dragon as a precaution in case that happens. It will stop him from getting a Tri-Gate, but it will preserve the Droll hand loop. So, he goes ahead and triggers Master Plan, chain blocks it with Curious, sending Trickstar Reincarnation, and adds a Quik Fix and a Spyral Resort. Let's see if the Curious mills anything of importance. It does not. So, goes ahead and activates Spyral Resort, adds Drone, and at this point, you know the combo, right? Summon Master Plan, add Assault, summon Helix, discard Assault with Quik Fix, Assault in Drone, stack deck, Helix, summon Quik Fix. This is the generic Spiral linear combo. I mean, you saw this in my previous games, and you've seen this in basically every combo video I do. This is the basic Spiral linear line that other combos get you to. Now that said, this is a bit of a jank combo without access to Magician Souls and having to use all that material on Curious that early before he could generate more linked material with Quik Fixes with cards in hand. He can't quite get to a Tri-Gate Wizard setup with this setup. Well, maybe he could, but he'd be sacrificing something else, right? He'd be sacrificing Sleeper or something, or Appaloosa. So this is like a little bit of a scuffed combo, but it's still going to get there because he still gets access to a second Quik Fix. Could still go into his, this is where I wanted to show something. Okay, so I was skipping ahead to Appaloosa, but this is an important thing. Because he's already gone to his Curious, he doesn't have to do it later in the combo. He can just go into Nightmare Griffin right now. Like, the most important part of this combo is obviously setting this Trickstar Reincarnation and getting Droll in hand. Everything else is in service to that, because if you actually successfully hand loop your opponent, it doesn't matter if you have a Sleeper or an Appaloosa or a Tri-Gate Wizard on board. There's backup plans in case something weird happens, like, double Called by the Grave. So he's going to actually discard his Rescue Mission to get to draw a card, and he draws an Extender, and that's going to be important, and to set his Trickstar Reincarnation early on into the combo. At this point, all he really needs to do is go into Shimoji Soldier and go into Union Carrier, and he's good to go. He could skip Tri-Gate Wizard, but because he drew an Extender, he now has just enough material to get to Tri-Gate Wizard, and I'll show you how. Or he's going to show you how. I'm not going to show you anything. He's going to Rescue Mission back his Master Plan, make Celine to get that extra material, but he is going to have to skip Sleeper to get there, and we'll see he's going to have just barely enough material to do everything. A funny thing that is important to know, because Spyral is not a linear combo, this particular combo that Kevin's showing you, you're not going to see on a spreadsheet or in a combo tutorial or in a video outside of a random gameplay video like this. No amount of tutelage can help you understand what Kevin did here besides practice and understanding the way the deck functions. This little part where he goes into Curious and Nightmare Griffin early, I've never done that with this variant of the combo, despite playing 30, 40 some odd games with it so far. This is just something that he kind of figured out on the fly while playing it. So he goes ahead and adds his Rescue Mission, obviously, which will be his 3rd Rescue Mission, I believe, right? Yep, that's it. He can go ahead and use Union Carrier, equip his Sing into his Master Plan, and link off to Appaloosa, and that's really the combo. Everything else does not matter. But Kevin's a clever person. He's very experienced with this deck, and he realized he has just enough material to get to Tri-Gate Wizard to insulate his combo from a Called by the Grave. He's going to use his Spyral Resort to add Super Agent, not Sleeper, draw some cards because he doesn't need them anymore because he's not going into Sleeper, and summon a Super Agent, and the super agent gets him the super agent name he needs to get Quik Fix back on the field. So this ad of super agent didn't represent one material, it represented two material thanks to Quik Fix. As you saw, he had to use his double Helix, unfortunately, to make a Selene, so he did not have access to his Quik Fix again. But he does now. They can use that to go into Tri-Gate Wizard, and he has one rescue mission left over from his previous Nightmare Griffin to equip, or not equip, but to finish up his Tri-Co-Link with Tri-Gate Wizard, setting up his Omni-Negate and protecting his Droll combo. So here we go. Standby phase, Shimoji Soldier activates. Let's do this in slow motion. Let's go activate Trickstar Reincarnation. At this point, you want to chain Droll and Lockbird. Uh-oh! The opponent's going to Forbidden Droplets. So this is the other thing I wanted to show you besides the funny, curious into early Nightmare Griffin, into Shimoji Soldier being made with Union Carrier being made with Shimoji Soldier and Nightmare Griffin because they're both light monsters. That was also very interesting. But Forbidden Droplets chained to Trickstar Reincarnation will stop you from activating Droll and Lockbird because obviously the opponent's going to send some monsters. I mean, who's going to play Forbidden Droplets without having monsters? And his opponent's actually going to send 4, and that's a very, very silly mistake by his opponent, probably because his opponent didn't realize what's happening, but you cannot chain Droll and Lockbird to Forbidden Droplets. It is a monster effect, and since the opponent sent a monster, you cannot put Droll and Lockbird on this chain. If Kevin had somehow magically known his opponent did have a Droplets in hand, he probably would have skipped Tri-Gate Wizard and kept a rescue mission in Graveyard, because you could, if you have one left over, chain rescue mission to summon a random Spyral, and then chain Droll and Lockbird to rescue mission. This is a very important thing to keep in mind. That said, 100% of decks really are playing Call by the Grave, so it was better to, put Tri-Gate Wizard in instead of setting up a way to play around Droplets, because it's not 100% someone's playing Droplets, right? It's almost 100% they're playing Call by the Grave, so it still is better to make Tri-Gate Wizard even though Kevin's getting punished here. That said, his opponent did not realize what was going on. His opponent really only has to send 2 monsters, obviously. There's only 2 relevant monsters on the board to Droplets, but I think they think they're getting hand looped. So they sent as many cards as possible to the graveyard as possible, just because why not put them in the graveyard instead of getting them banished by Trickstar Reincarnation. But his opponent's just going to, Kevin can't chain Droll and Lockbird now, so his opponent's going to banish 2 and draw 2, the number of cards he had in his hand. If his opponent had played this correctly, he would have drawn 4 cards instead of 2, and now Kevin's going to chain Droll and Lockbird, not chain it, but put on the chain the Droll and Lockbird, and this is kind of like the backup plan. Your opponent still has to OTK you through a Droll and Lockbird, which can be hard for a lot of decks, and it's going to be too hard for his opponent, who goes ahead and passes the turn. And thanks to Barricade Board Blocker's ad effect, he still has a Resort in hand to add Sleeper, and that's going to be a very easy OTK. I don't even think you need Sleeper to OTK, really. You could just link off the Appaloosa. But drop Sleeper, and this is going to be an attack for lethal, and the opponent goes ahead and concedes. And there we go, and a game played expertly, if punished a little bit, but still played expertly by Kevin OG. Let's get to a little conclusion. Alright gang, here's one last look at my deck before we go, and some things I would like to mention. Obviously, I'm not playing Bigfoot like Kevin was, though you could run it. Another thing I'm going to mention is I am running Gamma and Pankratops. The only reason I'm running Pankratops instead of Mothman is because Gamma needs a good bridge if you're going to run it, and like I said previously, there's going to be a lot of Fluwanderees in the format currently, and a lot of Dimension Shifter, and the only real out in the game to Dimension Shifter that is not called by the Grave is Gamma, especially when they go first and just activate Dimension Shifter as the first thing to do. So I feel like Gamma is kind of important in the Fluwanderees heavy meta. So even though it's it's playing the driver brick and it needs another Pankratops brick, I think it's worth it just to have the out. Other than that, this is basically where I've kind of settled. And as you saw, Kevin was on Trickstar Reincarnation, but I still like Disturbance Strategy. I like the Shuffle effect more. And another thing that I didn't mention earlier that might still kind of matter is because Fluwanderees is popular, hand trap like Lancia might be fairly popular, and Lancia would stop Trickstar Reincarnation because it does banish, whereas this Shuffle, so that's maybe another reason to run Disturbance Strategy over Trickstar, if not just because it's not a UR. So yeah, that was the video. I hope y'all liked it, and if you did, hey, drop a like, comment, and maybe subscribe. I'm getting unusually close to 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love to get there by the end of the year, so that'd be pretty fun. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Have a great day. Bye.